Skipping the long and arduous grind of the tune-up treatment, this Crimson Beetle type charges into the fray with some fresh new up-spec stats, ready to make it clear once again why he is definitely one of the greats of the KBT family. This is KBT06T, ArcBDT, with a new kit of Laser T, Rifle T, Gatling T, biped legs, and a brand new leg ability called Sparkle, which applies the Prism effect to self when charging Metaforce. Now, much like it was with Tyrell BT that was introduced, basically a lot of the bonuses that this new version of ArcBDT brings to the table are basically just perks that were prior only available to tune-up bonuses. So typically things like higher ascension bonuses or reduced requirements on charge consumption, or anything else of the like very similarly. So as far as new skills are concerned, there really isn't anything new per se, but it is basically a skill that is post-TP, but without the farming involved to actually do it. But the leg ability also is very unique as well, as a first of its kind that applies a one-time only stack in a very unique way. Laser T on the head part is a new shooting skill that is basically just a post-TP tune-up laser. So it gets basically a lot of the same bonuses you would expect of a laser that got the tune-up treatment prior to, such as, say, with God Emperor as an example. But one of the biggest perks that they highlighted for this version specifically is the reduced charge requirement in order to access the bonuses. So typically, instead of having to go 30% and 100% to access your bonuses, instead you'll be getting that times 1.5 damage bonus, or times 2, whichever it is, at the 10% charge gauge instead of the 30%. Which means you can fire this off just a little bit faster and sooner than normal, and really not have to worry about having to charge too heavily to make use of that bonus. Rifle T on the right arm is basically just the post-tune-up rifle, but not quite in the same spec as it was with Saikachi C, the crafty mode Saikachis. Instead of getting a higher pierce damage bonus, instead of getting the pierce damage bonus that you get with post-tune-up rifles, this one instead gets a stronger Ascension bonus. So instead of getting that regular like 400 or 400 bonus power when fully raised, or even 450 at 6-star, this one instead gets a bonus plus 500 or so base power added to the part, instead of the usual bonuses that you get upon Ascension rank. So compared to most other rifles, this one is going to hit notably harder than most others, and even harder than what you see here with the numbers listed, especially with that base power at 1300. Pack that extra 500 something on that from the Ascension bonus, and you're packing almost 2k with that base rifle. And it's a basic rifle at that, so no real drawback or penalties to use it either. Gatling T on the left arm is, again, just another post-tune-up Gatling skill, so it's a scattered AoE, damages one part normally, 2 others randomly, but this one has a little bit more of an extra kick to it that makes it stand apart from the post-tune-up bonuses. This one instead, upon being fully capped, will consume 4 charges of a guard instead of 3. Now, a while ago, it was actually changed that scatter skill, so Gatling, Claw, Charge Claw, or anything of the like, will consume more than 1 charge of a guard if they're being intercepted by one. And as for this reason, they were actually brought into light very, very quickly back into the meta as shield shredders. This one is certainly no exception to that rule, and it's actually worth noting that a good chunk of the shields that can be brought into play have between 3 and 5 charges. So that means that one use of this will nearly deplete the entirety of it without having to go over multiple turns to shred through it if you have to brute force through a shield. This alone actually puts it in a very solid competitive edge compared to most other scatter skills, because where most others will only do 3 charges, the ability to do 4 means that you can shred through it a whole lot faster if you have to brute force it, like I said. Biped legs means that ArcDT will have a relatively solid coverage across most biped terrains, most terrains in particular, as a very well-rounded coverage, much like it was with Tyrell BT. But in comparison to the original ArcBDT, which this model is an up-specced version of, this one actually specs a lot of the weaknesses that the original lacked, and that is primarily that of its speed. Now, the original ArcBDT actually specialized more in evasion with B loader and the ability to focus on dodge, but was also incredibly slow. This one is not. With a base mobility at 807, he is definitely willing to stand up there with the top dogs when it comes to speed, and he's got some very solid leg stats all around too. An evade of 1000 means he's going to have some pretty decent time dodging or grazing as necessary. A melee resist of 1020 and a shoot resist of 1581 does mean he can hold his own pretty well in a pretty well-rounded sense when it comes to the kind of resistances he can bring to the field. As far as armor is concerned, he's packing about 4200 for the head, about 3239 per arm, and 4019 for the legs, so pretty healthy in that area as well. However, one of the other really big things that ArcDT brings to the table is also the new leg ability of Sparkle, which again applies Prism to self when charging Metaphors. Now, as I mentioned, this leg ability of adding Prism to self is a very unique one, as it applies a buff to self very similarly to how others work, such as, say, Clairvoyance, or Rumbling, or Assail, or Excel. They apply an effect to self when charging Metaphors, but the effect of this one specifically is rather unique as a direct damage modifier instead of just a stat boost. Prism, upon activation, only acts once, and then dispels after use. The number of times that you can apply it to yourself will be relative to the rank of the legs. Additionally, you also get an Ascension bonus as a damage modifier, with a 6-star leg ability specifically highlighting an up to 210% damage modifier when using optic skills exclusively. So basically what this does is, upon activating Sparkle, you'll actually have the Prism effect to self that will stick with you until you use Laser T, which is, of course, an optic attribute skill. After you use Laser that first time, which will be hitting notably harder than it would have ever before, the effect will dispel, and you have to reapply it before you can go forward. Now, much like it was with Tyrell BT, ArcBDT is also going to be getting that Master Beetle treatment with an alternative meta change mode. His in particular actually focuses more on long range, in contrast to Tyrell's, which is close range. With a basically identical form, yes, I will say it, you can have 2 Master Beetles in the same team if you did collect both of them. ArcBDT, however, on the other hand, sports a kit of Master Beam, Longshot, Shotgun, Wheeled Legs, and the leg ability of Auto Charge, which passively fills his Metaforce gauge every turn for every action completed. Now, much like it was with Tyrell BT, ArcBDT also doesn't really sport anything new here aside from their Drive A, which is a master skill, which is basically just the version of their 2 skills together. Master Beam is a special type skill that is basically Hyper Beam, so it's an optic skill essentially, but it gets a double damage bonus at 30% charge and a ×3 bonus at 100%. Master Beam hits a little bit harder though. Instead, you get a ×4 damage bonus at 100% charge. Additionally, this is a skill that also cannot be used repeatedly. So this skill actually requires a 1-turn cooldown before you can fire it off again. Basically, it's hinting you can't spam this repeatedly because it is such an overload of power. And that ×4 damage bonus is honestly really tough to beat at almost 2500 base power before anything else comes into play. Longshot on Drive B is a conventional shooting skill that gets a damage plus bonus relative to how far away the target is from ArcDT. So the farther the target is, such as if they're just getting ready to finish their cooldown or just starting their heat phase, you'll be getting some major damage bonuses from that one. Whereas if you just barely run them to the center line, you probably won't be seeing too much of a damage bonus, if any. Shotgun on Drive C is a scatter skill that gets a ×1.5 damage bonus if you are attacking a foe facing you in heat phase. Or, on the other hand, if you attack a foe in their cooldown phase with poor timing, you instead deal love taps at a ×0.5 damage bonus. So you actually get half damage if you do not time this correctly. Wheeled Legs means that this version of Master Beetle will have a very solid and very well-rounded base high speed, arguably one of the highest base speeds compared to most leg types. At the drawback, it also is not very good on most terrains. So unfortunately, wheeled legs are only really good on 2 terrains at best, and that's including Cyber at S rank, but it's still packing some very well-rounded specs across the board if you are able to comp this or meet it. A base mobility of 1019 means he's already going to be in a very solid realm as well in base speed, comping it with very high base power. An evade of 1010 is basically identical to where he is in his base mode, so no real change there with the ability to dodge or graze. A melee resist of 1512 and a shoot resist of 2107 is very nice though, as it means whether he be in normal mode or in Master Beetle mode, he can definitely hold his own pretty solidly well when it comes to damage reduction as a whole. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate ArcBDT a pretty well-rounded 7.5 out of 10. In contrast to Tyrell BT, which is very solid in the damage output department, ArcBDT covers a lot of things that Tyrell BT cannot, such as the ability to basically be used right out of the box with no real drawback or penalty. So he does not require anything that is charge reliant. Laser can pump from Sparkle and even auto charge very, very easily. And the ability of Master Beam, Longshot, and Shotgun, if you're able to comp the wheeled legs and the poor terrain matching, is actually a very solid and very dangerous combo with some very solid numbers with Heat and Cool. Minus, of course, the high 300s to low 400s on Master Beam's Heat and Cool. But as pure set, I also have to rank him very equally at a 7.5 out of 10 as well. While Master Beam, Longshot, and Shotgun are actually very solid skills you really can't go wrong with using, you really aren't missing a whole lot either if you choose to mix up the parts, because even the post-tune-up bonuses that you get with Laser T, Rifle T, and Gatling T, even if you skip the legs entirely because it is kind of obvious that they're optic attribute oriented, they're still very solid skills overall with Ascension bonuses, or even with Gatling T's ability to consume 4 charges instead of 3.